Hey, all right, everybody. So wanted to bring it's a Saturday morning and I wanted to bring a whole bunch of specialists in. And what's pretty cool is this is kind of the brain trust that I go to. We have a lot of powerful people on this call, and it's a Saturday morning. We all got up early just to solve a pretty significant problem. So first and foremost, I want to introduce who I have in the room because a big lesson that I learned from one of my coaches, actually Steve Sims, who is an incredible human being, is like, you got to make sure you're not always the smartest people in the room. And definitely in this situation, I am not. And the reason why I wanted to bring this in is because this is a common problem that we have with a lot of current email clients. Big thing that happens is a client will come in, got a dormant list or wants to get a big email blast or is doing something new, and they want to blast these people and go through. This is the common issue that we kind of all came together and solved. And that's why I want to introduce these different folks. So I have Henry Sims, who runs Sims Media, an incredible company that just focuses on getting your clear messaging out, which is basically knowing what you do and making it so, I think the word is like so stupid that anybody can figure it out, but I don't want to do it any justice because you explain it which better than I can ever do it. So Henry, tell me a little bit about what Sims Media does.
Yeah, we work with brands to help them with their messaging and make sure that in today's more and more noisy climate, that their message actually gets to the right audience and that they can easily and quickly explain what they do and for who, and take a lot of the effort off of the end user in figuring out where their solution is.
So basically, like I said, I should be able within a 5-second time frame or even a 3-second time frame know exactly what you do and what you're about, and that's what you focus on. Now, truth be told, they're actually working with me into defining who I am and what my messaging is. This is again why I'm big in only promoting the things that I truly believe in. And what's important about what you said is getting their messaging out, which is where we are right now. Is we're trying to get a message out, and we have the perfect client scenario that happens to about like I would say 80% of the time. Now we also have Matt Ratliff, who is a pure genius when it comes to anything tech. And he's also a funny techie like myself. And Matt's the guy that I go to when I don't know something. So if anybody's been following me or following any of these other individuals, this is a pretty powerful group right here. And Matt has worked with some incredibly big names, just like Sims Media does, and really not only developing their brand, but making sure that the emails or even just their general technology works and is getting out to the right individuals. Now, what's really cool about what Matt does, he works more so on the background. And today we want to kind of give you guys like an overall picture of the area that we were literally getting up at like God knows what time in the morning because everybody's on different time zones here to try to solve one problem. And Matt, give us a little bit of an intro. I hope I did it justice, but I know you do a lot more than what I said. But if you can give us a little intro on what you do.
Yeah, so I've got a huge tech background. I come from a computer networking background, so that's where I spent the last 20 years. But email deliverability is what I focus on now for business owners, and I can basically make anything happen. So if you've got some email issues, what I'd basically do, I'll go behind the scenes, I'll look at all of your tech stack to see exactly, making sure that you've got all of your DNS records established correctly. There's a lot of confusion with SPF, DKIM, and even DMARC. Then I can actually go into feedback loop systems and see exactly how inbox providers are looking at you, how they've categorized you, what kind of reputational status they've put on you, and that kind of thing. So it's more of showing people how to do it right and do it right the first time. So that's essentially what I help with.
Awesome. And that, again, going back to what we're trying to do is just getting the message out, right? So that's the main focus of this. So here's a scenario. We have a client. They're about to launch a very big challenge. They have a list that they haven't pretty much leveraged in over a couple of years. They've been back and forth with a little bit of communication, but nothing consistent. And what we're trying to do is ensure that we're sending the message out and that everybody gets the message that this new challenge, this new feature, this new product is out. And especially with Henry and what he's doing, they're focusing on a very tight message of like, hey, this is what we do and this is how we do it. And they're trying to get out to the individuals. And then what Matt and I are trying to do is figure out the best way to get it out to the individuals. Now, here's what happened. So we set up an entire system. It was working beautifully. We did a few tests. Everything was handed in the inbox. And mistakenly, they thought they were ready to go. So what did they do? They blasted out 7,000 emails in one shot. Believe it or not, this is a common mistake. And we're going to tell you what the reason why that is. So I'll explain it. I'll let kind of Matt go a little bit deeper on it. But this is kind of the dumb way because again, I'm not the smartest person in the room here. So I want to dumb down a little bit. Email is like I call it like an elastic band, right? That's the analogy I use to help understand it. So make believe your list is 100. So your little elastic band is this big. And all of a to 200, and your list technically over time should be growing little by little by little. So the elastic band is pretty good. So the email service providers that Matt talked about, Yahoo, Microsoft Outlook, Google, Mac, Apple, all those are different service providers. Each one has a different set of rules. And that's got there's a whole tech behind it, but they got a set of rules of how they like emails coming in and whether or not they see you as a good email source or a bad email source. Now, the one big factor is if you are a little tiny elastic band, if you go from 100 to 7,000, you literally like just snap that band in half. And that's the way my brain thinks about it. And all of a sudden it's like, holy smokes, you are definitely a spammer because we never saw you use that volume before. And you went from 0 to like 900 in like a matter of a day. And it's just, it's confusing the email servers. And now there's the question whether or not the quality of the domain. Now there's a lot more to that, but that's a very simplistic version. Matt, I know you can add to that a little bit, but in a non-techie, because we don't want the heck out of people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, basically what's happening is that if, these large inbox providers, they've got a ton of data on the way that spammers work. And so they know the telltale signs. So if they see something, even though you don't intend to be a spammer, that's not exactly what you're doing, but you do something that's out of the ordinary that kind of fits into that bucket of what they've seen in the past, then guess what? They're going to put you into that same bucket, and it's going to take quite a while to kind of get out of that. And that's essentially what's happened here.
So it's interesting, Henry, right? So think about it, right? You're about to rebrand somebody altogether. They're about to relaunch. They have this incredible, exciting brand. They made the shift. How detrimental is it that their message gets out, like to their business?
Well, that is the goal, is to make sure that your audience sees you. And this email piece to it, email's been around so long and we kind of just neglect or overlook it. And so with these kind of cases, it's when people actually learn how much goes into having healthy domains and healthy email practices to make sure that it does get sent, because there's so many security walls being put up into all different avenues of communication, but we don't even really think much into email. So it's actually incredibly important that we set it up properly to make sure that anyone is getting the emails.
Yeah, and if we were thinking of putting a dollar value, right? So let's just make a typical scenario out there, right? You pay for a lead at some point in your career, whether it's like you're up on a stage and it's your time that you're paying for, whether it's, and again, Sims Media does a lot of stage work, is actively always talking. You're on social media, whether it's Instagram, whether it's YouTube and so forth. And over time, you're paying for that, whether it's you're paying a dollar value or you're paying the time bucket. Both are equally valuable. And let's make believe you're putting ad money into it, and it's costing you $2 to $3, $5 to $10 to $15 per lead. You now have a list of leads that you paid for that you're not actively using. And the only thing you've gotten from these customers that they haven't bought is their email address. It does have a compounding effect on the amount of money that you spent and why email is still so important and why people kind of misjudge it a little bit. And 9 times out of 10, what are people most comfortable in, either in text messaging and social media, is email. I still communicate with email. It's still not out of the picture, and it's still a very big part. And that's kind of what's important here. So just something to think about of deliverability. So there was a couple things and tips and tricks that we are doing now, and with Matt's help, and again with Henry. I'm going to focus on Henry first and what we did. So the first thing that we did is we refocused on the brand, and more importantly, we created an email series to revitalize, like, hey, don't forget who I am. Here's what I've done. Now, I think the twist with this person was, well, you tell me, what did we focus the emails on? Do you remember, as we were building that out?
Yeah, the goal of the emails is not promotional at all. It's purely to be value gives and entertaining and really just interacting with your audience and even prompting replies and actual conversations. So just all overall prompt giving to be able to get actual opens and clicks, and also build your own authority as well at the same time. But overall, just get your audience to connect with you and become more engaged.
Now, the tech perspective and the tech stack. Now, Matt and I use a lot of, Go High Level, and this particular client uses Go High Level. So usually the tech stack that we work with High Level is Mailgun. Now, this is what Matt and I really specialize in, and Matt is more on deliverability. I kind of put all the things together, even though Matt can do that also. And what we we're doing is we built a warm-up sequence over a course of time. So again, remember that elastic band, we were sending out 100 the first day, 200 the second day, 300, and we're constantly building. I think Mailgun's threshold is 20% increase every day. That's the first step that we did. The reason being is because we're trying to warm up the email address. The second part that we did, and this is where Matt's kind of goes in, is we added the records that are required, an SPF, a DKIM, and a DMARC. Now, I don't know if you can do like a 30% view of like that, Matt. I know it's always the hardest thing is explaining what a record is. But if we could do like I don't know. I don't know if you got like secret sauce into like explaining DMARCs or or simplifying it.
Yeah, well, whenever you go into Mailgun or any email service provider, you've got a set of critical pieces, and those two pieces typically are always and should be SPF and DKIM. So those are the two main ones. Now, if you do a DMARC policy, most providers don't give you any knowledge about setting up a DMARC policy. The reason being is because it can be very, very dangerous in a lot of ways. The reason being is because you've got three different pieces from a policy standpoint when you're looking at DMARC. You can set it to none, you can set it to quarantine, and you can set it to reject. Now, I do push all of my clients to go in the direction of reject, but there's some pieces you've got to know about. So you've got to have a domain match on either your SPF or DKIM. Now, it gets very dangerous if you do this at the root level, because in order to make it work with every system that you might have that domain included with, there must be, like I said before, an SPF and or a DKIM for each of those entities. So if you had a reject policy for DMARC and you didn't account for maybe two other systems that's claiming to send email from your domain's behalf, guess what? Those emails are not going to be seen at all. They're just going to go into the dev null box. No one's going to see it. So that's why it's dangerous. So there are reasons for looking into a professional to look and see that, do you need a quarantine policy? Do you need a reject policy? Should you stick with none? So for those facts, it's very important.
Yeah, and for the beginner, just so not to overly confuse, the safest route, especially just having a DMARC, is better than having none.
Yeah.
So putting that P equals none, and there's plenty of examples. I mean, Matt has a YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel where you guys can see that, and we have examples of how to add these records. We at the very beginner level always add the none, because like again, this is where Matt's genius comes in. He will definitely show you the different rejects versus quarantines. But in this situation, we actually made it looser. We put a none because we're just trying to get it out and we're trying to get it built out. Over time, if we want to increase our deliverability, we will revisit that and increase the policies or change them. So, but that is good. So having those three records, you've heard about us warming up and setting a little bit at a time every day. So to kind of increase that elasticity band. And then what's really critical, and I think this is where Match Genius kind of really tips the point, is that when you're putting services like actually all email, what do they call it? Are they called ESPs? I always get confused. The ESPs are Gmail, Microsoft, and Outlook, right? Anything.
Well, those are inbox for ISPs typically.
ISPs, okay. Yep. And then ESPs are your active campaigns, your
mail guns,
and everything else. Yeah. So ISPs, ESPs, only smokes like, and me dyslexic in nature, I can't even figure out the letters. So the point of that is that they will put you in a pool of different IP addresses. So make believe you're sharing a house with 100 unruly or nice people. You really don't know because you're not knocking on every door and seeing what they're all about. So anytime they put you into this pool, and again, this is where Matt has a way of going inside and seeing what IP pool they're sending you from. And sometimes, regardless of the provider, they will put you in a bad pool. So right off the gates, and this was kind of the situation that we landed in. So on top of sending from a bad domain and like blasting out that whole thing, we got put into like a not so okay domain, which we made that mistake with the blast. And then all of a sudden, like now we're in a bad kid pool and now we're stuck. So what we did is we actually had to buy another domain and put it into a different IP pool. And luckily when we ran some tests, we saw that it had high reputation. Everything was good. And again, I didn't run the test, Matt did. But that's just to give you an idea of what's involved. For everybody using MailChimp, Mailgun, SendGrid, ActiveCampaign, this is happening to all of you and you might not know it. Just to go to show you again how complex email can be and some of the things that you can just kind of warn yourself about and at least know that they exist. So just to kind of recap and kind of closing this out in the loop, One, starting with Henry, and what he did is redefining your message, making sure that when you're sending an email out, that it's actually going to be an email that somebody clicks and engages with, and actually asking for replies, spreading it out. And again, making sure that your message is stupidly clear of what you do and how you do it, followed by warming it up and setting in the right tech. So can't break that elastic band, can't blast 100 people or like 100 people at a time, but you can't blast like 1,000,000 people or 1,000 people or 7. Never buy a cold email list from anywhere and think that that's an active list. Period. Hands down. Don't ever do it. No email service provider. They'll shut you down, put you in spam, and some of them will actually kick you out, believe it or not. So buying lists, that is foregone long. There are definitely different tactics for cold email. This is not one of them. And you don't want to use these ESPs for sending a cold email. There's actually, believe it or not, one that are specifically for cold email that we're not going to cover in this. And that's not what we specialize in. Well, maybe Matt does. I know he does some of that, but I definitely don't. And the other thing is understanding the 3 records that Matt mentioned, your DKIM, your SPF, and your DMARC, and followed also along of like understanding where you're getting out of. Are you in the cool IP pool? Or are you in the not so cool IP pool? And then just making sure you're managing that. So I hope this brought a ton of value. Make sure it is, again, you got Sims Media here. We got Funnel Techie and Matt, and also Matt. Oh, by the way, you also have a dashboard that integrates to High Level. I'm a big fan of. So
Awesome.
we are doing you're doing some pretty cool things, which High Level, that particular tech does not actually provide a dashboard, and you've been filling in that gap. And now actually you've just had a recent enhancement. I think I've been pushing for quite a while, where it actually shows net growth of like how many people are unsubscribing versus how many people are coming in, which I think is going to be a great addition. But again, really, really cool. I just wanted to kind of share this knowledge because here we are solving a problem. And I kind of told Henry and Matt, I'm like, hey, do you guys kind of want to just jump on and share this with the universe? Because I think like, let's make sure that the app's at like, whatever time it is in the morning on a Saturday, we're kind of like we all have families here, that it's well worth it and we're providing some value back. But hoping you guys got some value out of it. And if you have any questions, reach out. All these will be links at the bottom of like all the different, people that are on here that you can definitely reach out to. And, they all got their wonderful talents. And I wanted to share them with you because, again, this is a very powerful little tiny room right here. And I want to make sure I share it with all of you. So with that being said, thank you again for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.